Live soon. Oh, here we are. We are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome, as usual, to the LovePod. We are back. That's twice this week because we have some recaps with a very special guest. And before we get into the recaps, Jordan and I are here, of course. We have Kenny Barnes from season 1 of Love is Blind. How are you today, Kenny? Welcome to the show.
No, I'm doing great and really excited to be on. Obviously, it's always fun connecting with people, whether it's virtually or in person. So really appreciate y'all having me.
And it's been quite a few years. It's been 4 years since your season of the show at least premiered. So how do you feel about the current season versus when you were on?
Yeah, so great question. And for people that haven't really followed the show, and I guess additional context to season 1, it was actually filmed almost 6 years ago to date.
Oh my gosh.
It took over 2 years to actually release it. So, that's one thing we always talk about with season 1 is like we waited for so long for it to come out. So much life had happened right between end of filming, other relationships had come up, and just like season 6's experience right now is that lag right in between filming and also like real life goes on, and then all of a sudden it gets released. When people get in other relationships, and my wife can attest to this, we were 7 months into our relationship at that time, and I had to completely erase our dating history. I had to erase everything. So it was really bizarre. But yeah, it's pretty special because obviously this one takes place in Charlotte. Side note is when season 1 came out, I actually relocated to Charlotte. So I didn't actually have the true experience of it actually being released in real time in the city I filmed it in. So it's actually been kind of special because obviously getting to reconnect with some of the people that are on season 6, but also to be a part of the community because Charlotte's got such a great community. So that's been a really cool thing to be a part of.
That is awesome. And it seems like you guys all have a bond, even other seasons of no matter where you're located, connecting over this experience, whether it be a trauma bond or a positive thing. Everybody's really tight, which is awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, it's as cliche as it sounds. It's an experiment, right? That unless you actually have gone through it, you really can't, fully explain. But yeah, I mean, that's something I think all of us at season 1 through 6, we can all, kind of attest to. It's a very special, somewhat difficult process, right, to go through. And obviously I think season 6 is, seeing that right now, especially the most recent episodes, everything kind of comes to a head. There's a lot of context missing, like always, but that wouldn't be reality TV without it. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to watch, and obviously the bonds that you have with these people is pretty strong.
Do you have any advice for the fans that are coming really hard, I think now more than any other season before, to help explain the dynamics and maybe ease the way for other cast members?
Yeah, there's a lot that contributes to it. Obviously, right? There's so much that happens behind the scenes, and that season 1, it was the first of its kind, right? So like we always say, is all the season 1 cast members, we didn't know what we were walking into, right? So we truly were walking in blindly. So a lot of the content that was captured, it could be a little bit more organic in the sense that like we didn't know what to expect, right? It's like as far as the first few days in the pods, the whole world didn't know what a dating pod was. So like,
That's true.
So now on season 6, which I love that they're showcasing the pods, right, and the interactions in them, because as you reflect right back to season 1, almost 2, 3, and 4, there was very little context that happened in the pods as far as how the relationships built. I can personally say, like, I'm pretty sure if I recall, Kelly and I probably had like 3 conversations in the pod, and it was like, all right, you're getting engaged. Like, it was like, how did this happen? Right. So, yeah. So, the one thing I would say though, to people, like, just always, come with an open mind. Obviously people are going to be painted in not the best way, just based off of certain things that could absolutely be taken out of context. And it's just always a good reminder that, we're just human beings. Right. And I think most people have really good intentions. And it's just, honestly, based off of the time that something was captured and then how that's portrayed could be completely different.
Oh, sure.
Out there.
I was just talking to somebody today about your season and how long of a period it's been between, and is so-and-so still with so-and-so, and is Jessica still single? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, she's married with a baby. No, he has a new wife. Yeah, no, those two are still together. And even from the time that you guys film, like you said, till it comes out is such a long period of time. And we always like to lead with love and not be on, as much as we enjoy the drama of the show, be on the kinder side of things. So trying to keep you guys supported as opposed to what goes on in maybe some of the Reddit groups or chat groups, I think is really important, and important for fans to remember too.
No, for sure.
Is it true that you guys, when you filmed, were in bunk beds in like a warehouse?
Yeah, so I think I'm past my NDA now, so I can say kind of whatever.
I hope so.
I think there's an ongoing lawsuit, but I'm not a part of that, so I can definitely speak to this. Going back to the show didn't really exist, right? So like production, they didn't really know what they were doing either. Season 1 was very much the guinea pigs. That's not a like, oh, we're propping ourselves up. It's definitely not something that, makes us better. It's actually the opposite. The first 3 nights we slept on correctional facility beds. And we actually were in a studio just south of Atlanta in Peachtree City. And it was actually really close to like, what's the name of the studio? It's Pineville Studios is the name of it. But either way, so we actually stayed in air conditioned trailers. So, like movie set trailers. But when you walked in, it was just flat bunks with like slightest mattress. So like it was a correctional facility mattress. It wasn't, anything that was plush. And I don't know if there's any truth to it, but we felt like it was done deliberately. It was to break us a little bit, right, as far as our comfort zone. Obviously, if we were sleep deprived, and we filmed literally like 16 to 20 hours, depending on how long that we all agreed to stay in the pods, right, and have cameras on us. But yeah, between that, long days, and then obviously not having comfortable beds to sleep in, I was telling Vince and Julian about this last weekend. I was like, it literally was just one of those things where you just had to show up. My drink of choice was Bailey's and coffee because it was like enough of a upper, but also enough to like kind of mellow myself out. Because if I had showed up sober, seriously, like if I showed up sober, like I don't know who I would have been. And it goes both ways, right? It's like some people didn't have a vice, like some people ate a lot of food, which obviously is going to make you exhausted. Other guys that ended up not getting showcased like every season's gone through, just drank a lot. So it was just a really tough thing for people to deal with, psychologically. But yeah, so we did sleep on correctional facility beds for the first 3 nights. And as we were told, it was because I think it was Lauren saw a cockroach on the female side.
Oh no!
It was the timeout period. Like, all right, we're gonna move y'all to a hotel. So yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I'd be, if they didn't move you, and I was there, I would have been out. I'll pay you whatever fee you want me to pay, but please. We do have a fan question from Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, which I love that name. What are your thoughts on the UKAN Foundation? And for anybody that doesn't know, that is the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. I knew I wasn't going to get that.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I fully support, right, that people that go into reality TV, there's got to be another layer of support and assistance. I think from the front end, I think giving people something, right, like a support group to lean on, so they know that they're not kind of just blindly going out there, right, and into the world of production, and especially in reality TV, we're not professionals, or at least, we shouldn't be, trying to seek a professional career in acting, right, or any type of production. So yeah, I mean, I think in principle, it's a phenomenal, idea. So hopefully that they continue to get backing, because I think it's definitely a void that's needed in the industry for sure.
That was a great question. Thank you, Bunny Hugs. And then last question before we get into the recap is, if you were coming off of Love is Blind filming back then and had seen the opportunities for things, spinoffs like Perfect Match or any other reality shows, was that something that you would have considered moving on in the reality TV sphere?
So that's a great question as well. If my now wife was not in the picture at the time, there's a really good chance I would have. I know at the time that I fortunately got a really good edit, so to speak, if people want to say that. I did feel like I was about as true to myself as I possibly could have been. So I would say that I didn't really give production too much leeway to spin things in a certain way. I'm a very intentional person. So like, I walked through the process, treat it with respect, but also just wanted to make sure first and foremost that like I was representing my friends and family as best as possible. But with that being said, like had my now wife not been in the picture, 100%, you have to capitalize on opportunities. It's such a unique thing to go through. Right. And so to get that notoriety in that moment of time, I would feel like you'd be kind of shorting yourself, or anyone would be shorting themselves if you were given that opportunity and then others, came about. So I definitely would have pursued it, but it wasn't in the cards for me. That wasn't in wasn't in God's plan for me. Yep.
There's plenty of shows that don't require dating. So maybe you and your wife will join in on an Amazing Race or a cooking show or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fully on board. If anyone that's on the casting group for the challenge, I'd love to do the challenge. I think mental toughness games, physical toughness. I mean, that's my background. I played college football. So like anything that's regimented, anything that requires mental and physical tests, I'm all for it. And side note, which is actually pretty wild, a guy I went to Wofford College with actually won the season of Survivor as well as the challenge.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So pretty small world, but so Chris Underwood's his name, and he's a phenomenal guy. He's married.
I love Chris. I love Chris so much.
Yep. He's solid through and through. He's exactly right as how he's portrayed on TV. He's just a hustler. He's super sharp. But I'll never forget, like the first time I met him was he walked on to the Wofford football team, and that was our first interaction. And he literally is exactly the way that he is on TV. Obviously, a little maturity's happened over the years, but yeah, he works his tail off. And that was one thing that immediately stuck out to me. And he's carried that through with his life. So very proud of him.
He's had a really rough season. His last season, they just came at him so hard, and he really deserved, if anyone, to win that one. But that's a whole nother show and a whole nother recap.
Sorry for the tangent.
No, that's okay. I love Chris, and I'm a very long time challenge fan. So that's awesome. Very small world. Tell him we said hello.
No, we'll do.
And hi, Vince. We have a shout out to you from Vince. He can only stay on for 5 minutes, so maybe he'll recap the episode with us from the chat. And you are a king. So speaking of Vince and season 6, Jordan, do you want to get into the recap? You're going to have to come up off of mute to get into it, though.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah, but I'm excited because we left off this last episode 9 with this whole kind of confrontation between Laura and Jeremy, and then we kind of started this episode 10 with Jeremy and his mom talking about that whole situation with Sarah Ann. And I mean, I guess they get into it a little bit more later, but I don't know. What did you think about the conversation with his mom?
I'll let you go first, Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, it's so first off, it's so difficult when parents get into the fold, and you can start connecting the dots, right? Just from like, all right, which parents showed up, and that's one thing to always keep in mind too, where you're asking like, is there any advice you could give to viewers, right, and the fans?
Right.
One is just having a lot of empathy for like when you're getting family, whether it's mom, dad, right, whoever's in the picture, siblings, cousins, it doesn't matter. Like that's a huge leap of faith. And so obviously that moment, I'm sure what was, actually showcased, I'm sure there was so much more to it. And regardless of how the storylines, right, have unfolded with Jeremy and with Laura and all the cast members, that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, as far as that, interaction, if we're looking at just through the lens of what's been produced, I would say that it just didn't seem like, and again, take it just through the lens of production. It didn't seem like Jeremy was being super honest about like everything that had transpired. I would say there was definitely I think he was very deliberate, right, with things that he did say, and he was very deliberate with things that he didn't say, because what you include and what you exclude is actually that's what bakes the cake, right? And so obviously he spun it in a way that seemed a little bit more easy for his mom to digest. And so I think that left her more optimistic, like, okay, you'll figure this out. Like maybe I'll have a daughter-in-law. When back to the matter, as a viewer, it's like, well, little do you know, Mom, like your son kind of screwed the pooch a little bit. Yeah. And like, he's got some apologizing to do to step up and honestly, just, I think, take accountability for what he did. As I was watching it with my wife, and that's why I said, like, regardless of the full context, this is a moment that whether you're Jeremy on this season, or if you're one of the other men, if something doesn't go right, regardless of what actually happened, the sooner you come out right and just address like, yep, I could have dealt with this a little bit better. That's how you can resolve the issue. And there's still going to be people, right? They're going to disagree with you, but that's just life, right? I mean, you're not going to please everyone, but yeah, that was the one thing I took away from that, where it's like, all right, I don't know if you're being 100% honest with your mom, and I don't know if you're being 100% honest with yourself. And so it's like, well, you keep just digging yourself this hole. Maybe production's just really good because they've got 6 years right of practice. But yeah, that was my take on the interaction there.
Something that I wrote down was, he said nothing inappropriate happened. And I'm thinking the whole time, the whole situation was inappropriate. I mean, like you said, taking accountability. I didn't feel that happened. And I understand not wanting mama to have all the full details on the situation and get into the nitty gritty, no matter if something actually happened beyond talking or not. But it felt like a little bit of whitewashing the situation to paint himself in a good light the entire episode, which we'll get into further, of course. But that was just my take on it. I agree with you about accountability for sure.
Yeah. The principle of the matter, right, is just, that situation could have been avoided, should have been avoided. No shit on Jeremy, right, or anyone that gets in situations like that, because things happen, right? Life happens, but that all comes back to just the sooner you can step up and just say, hey, you know what? Let me talk about it, one-on-one with Laura, but then also come out and make a statement. Just be like, hey, that if I could go back, right, and do it again, like I definitely would do it differently. So maybe he does that down the road, but that would be the only
thing. We don't know yet. It doesn't seem like it, but maybe we'll leave that door open.
100%.
All right, Jordan, what's next on the list?
Okay. All right, so we have a few different scenes. They all kind of run together in my head, but I know we have a couple of different scenes with Amy and Johnny, and I just want to get them out of the way because I feel like there's not as much to talk about with them. Not that they're not interesting, but there's not as much to talk about. But we have a scene with them kind of like building furniture, which was cute. Again, it's all very cute,
right?
And
but
all
like,
all very surface level. Except, and I've seen a lot of stuff about this in our Facebook group, or several posts about Amy and her dad, and that being such a cute and like heartfelt moment, and I really liked that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What do you think of them as a couple?
I think they're as solid and steady, right, as this season's had. That's not an original statement. I think most people that have seen it at least paid somewhat attention. They're a kind of a shoe-in, it seems like. I felt like I could relate as much right with them as any of the other couples, just because regardless of what my whole story is, that's a whole other show of what actually was going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, they don't seem dramatic, right? They seem very intentional, right, with being just supportive of each other, and yeah, like it's they're just living life, right, like as they normally would. So if it's building furniture one day, right, or meeting her father, she seems like just a super sweet person. They both treat each other right, just so respectfully. So yeah, there's really no surprises with them, right? It's just kind of like, all right, so we got Amy and Johnny. It's like, all right, well, here we go. Here's a warm and comforting moment from them, and then they pan to the next dramatic thing.
Yeah. Then on to the next drama. I think they got a very similar edit to you and Kelly at the time. I mean, It seems like we kind of saw you guys a little bit, and it was like, okay, they're fine. Moving on to the next ones. But you said it was a little bit different behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, it's because of, and I do attribute a lot of this to just season one. We didn't know how the show would be formatted, right?
Sure.
So technically, Love Is Blind didn't exist when we filmed, so it was actually the Atlanta Singles Project, and they've probably carried that name. Kinetic has probably carried that name for all the cities
okay.
they filmed in. But it is important to remind everyone, like, we didn't know the show was going to get purchased. So, none of that stuff, like, we could never see, like, okay, down the road, this could be produced this way. Like, there was a time where we all thought we were getting punked. Like, when we didn't actually have the, we didn't have the reveal yet. Like, there were parts where we're like, maybe we're getting played and it's like artificial intelligence.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, not joking, but yeah, it's like just I won't go into more detail, but yeah, like very similar edits to me and Kelly. But the things that we just focused on, which we did, we treat each other with respect. If I went back right and did it, 1,000 times over, I would probably handle it. I would hope I could handle it exactly the same way. We had mutual discussion, on several occasions about just, hey, we're going to get through this process. The contract, right? So, you can kind of, fold into this too. We didn't know what rights we had. So we signed a contract and we were being told you have to get to the altar. So we're just kind of showing up, right? And being the best versions of ourselves as we can and being, we'll go through the dates, we'll go to the dance classes, we'll go to the cooking classes, we'll interact with other couples. But yeah, we were essentially just drama free because we knew, like, hey, we're going to get to the altar. That was still such a built up moment. I mean, as anyone would imagine, it is still a wedding day and you're still having your groomsmen there and she had her bridesmaids there. Insert family again, right? So family and friends get there. So yes, surface level, you could look at it and be like, all right, we all are acting, but 48 days into an experiment like that, it was as emotionally exhausting, right? And physically exhausting as anything I've ever done, for sure. So it's wild to think about.
And you two knew ahead of time that you were not going to get married, correct?
We figured, we started having, there started to be a disconnect probably like the second day of the romantic getaway. It's just, and it truly is just, it comes down to living in reality. You can form a great relationship with someone, right? If you have undivided attention and you literally have no physical distraction. So when you're just speaking to someone through a wall, as everyone likes to talk about, and you don't have TV, you don't have friends, you don't have your sphere of influence, right, to distract you, you can get really close with people really quickly. However, when you're around someone, you pick up on tendencies. You also see the follow through or lack thereof, right? I mean, proof is in the action, right? Words only go so far. So there were a lot of things that, we aligned on that definitely didn't match when we actually got in front of each other. And that's, again, that's personal, it's professional. But yeah, we just, started to have a kind of a, stray away, from that moment. And then obviously, we didn't get married, but yeah, I mean, the crazier part about it is that production, the last like 5 days, we're trying to convince Kelly and me that we were saying, oh, well, like maybe I need to marry this person. So that's where so that's where, again, there's manipulation there where it's like, okay, well, like, are you not thinking about this enough? Like, are you sure like that you're not gonna, propose? And, Kelly, up until the last day, I remember she called me. I was actually leaving there's moments in life, right, you never forget. So I'm driving back to the apartment building that we were all staying at. And it's probably like 11 o'clock at night. I was leaving a client function and she was, freaking out. She's like, are we not getting married tomorrow? I was like, no, like we're not. She's like, okay, well, like, I just want to make sure like you're serious about that because, I had my exit interview with production today and they were just telling me that you were saying, like, as if I was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They don't think you're going to talk.
It doesn't matter, right? Like if they could insert enough doubt, right, and enough confusion, I think what they were holding on is it was another way, right, for them to spin the drama machine, right? And so they just wanted to see what would happen, and so that was why it was so tough for both of us for all the factors, day of. But it's just, yeah, that whole moment, right, culminated with everything that we went through. Nothing but respect for her, nothing but respect for her, family and her friends. I felt the same way then as I do today. Just wish her nothing but the best.
Sure. I think everybody, we don't know as far as this season, but everybody from prior seasons, even if they ended on bad terms, doesn't wish ill will on the other person in the relationship. Did your families, were you able to give them a heads up that you weren't going to say yes at the altar? Is that genuine surprise?
So I kind of alluded to my mom that it wasn't real, and it was just because she was so invested. I think like she was invested regardless, and so that's a whole I can never replace that support that I had from my mom, right? And she's that way for everything I've done, and both my parents are like that, but she was very overly involved with it. So I did feel like I owed it to her that you don't need to show up right the day of the wedding stressed out or
Sure.
expecting something that's not going to happen. So I was able to say enough to where she understood.
Okay.
But yeah, my sisters, maybe they talked to my mom. Partially, I didn't really talk to too many of my friends about it, and obviously anyone else that we had to invite because they want friends and extended family to be there. But we also were scared of our contract obligations,
Yeah,
right?
that's fair.
In a crazy world, right, where my uncle was talking right off camera and someone heard it, those were legitimate concerns I had where it's well, what am I going to get?
Absolutely.
Am I going to get sued by Netflix? I don't have the money for that. Even if my parents hired our best, family attorneys, it's just, I don't want to go that road. So yeah, I kept it very hush hush.
Okay.
I could, but yeah, I alluded to my mom, hey, tomorrow's a big day. Just know that on my wedding day, this would be different. And again, in different words, I was able to allude to hey, just know I would be handling this differently. You would be in a different position, tomorrow than you currently are. Just okay. Yeah.
Right.
That is fair enough. I would be afraid of that too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Getting back to that recap, Jordan.
Yeah, and speaking of family, we get to meet Jimmy's family. Chelsea gets to meet Jimmy's family, and I loved his family personally. I thought that they seemed like the sweetest people. They reminded me so much of just people in my family, just good old Southern people, and I really liked them a lot.
They help win you over with Jimmy, I think, too. From him getting that bad edit in the beginning, maybe, to seeing another side of him talking about Chelsea and meeting his family, and his mom saying she can see the love between them. There's a lot more Team Jimmy in the Facebook group than there were previously. What were you thinking, Kenny?
Yeah. I mean, he's hitting home runs in the bottom of the ninth for sure. If you're a baseball fan, he came from nowhere. He's kind of slowly, I think, grown on people. A lot of it could be editing, right? But jury's still out. But Jordan, to your point, in certain family, getting to know, right, all right, who raised him? What's his foundation like? What would your support system be? If you were Chelsea, I mean, and those are things I immediately go to where it's all right. Despite how this relationship has unfolded, in this reality TV setting, he comes from a really good background, and they seem like kind-hearted, well-intentioned, right? Would go to bat for you if you were, in a time of need, type of people. So, and that's not to get too philosophical, but that's what our world needs. We need more people like Jimmy's parents. So I was a big fan of them getting showcased like that. So if Jimmy, if you're watching this, your parents are gold, man, and hopefully we can get out and play golf, sometime soon too.
Oh my gosh, all the parents this season are incredible. And I don't know, the parents are everyone's big fans. I never see really any dynamic otherwise. And I think it was Kwame's sister or somebody the year before who won, we do superlatives every year and won favorite cast member. It wasn't even one of the actual main cast. So we love the families.
100%.
Yeah, everyone liked her. I do remember that. And then also another person that everybody is loving so far from these episodes is AD's mom. And that conversation that she had with AD and then also with Clay. I've seen a lot of really good things about that conversation.
Yeah, Kenny, what do you?
I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree with that. I had a video of Clay's rental boat company, Wave Sandy, because he's local. I actually had it pulled up, but it fell asleep. So yeah, now I get to fanboy on Clay and obviously the relationship with AD. They both just seem so genuine. I think that's the thing that sticks out most. And there's a lot of great qualities about them too. But yeah, just how genuine they are. Obviously a huge moment for AD to introduce her mother to Clay, because it doesn't seem like that's something that's happened, frequently in the past. But her mother specifically, you talk about someone that is just, it doesn't matter what's happened in her life, doesn't matter what happened with her, her marriage, right, with AD and her father. She's there to show up for her daughter. And so I thought that was really special. Where my mind always goes is like, all right, it's like what led during the filming of that? Because it's really important for people to know, like when that filming session was set up, it's probably like a 4 to 5 hour block of time. So, so curious to see how like that transpired, because they're sitting down, they're asking questions, and I'm sure there was probably a lot of dead time. There's a lot of like, okay, like let's go change this position, and we'll sit down here and we'll have the same conversation. So for them to get that emotional, I think, authenticity out of her mom is like, that's a really special thing. So you can tell her mom cares, and that shines through regardless.
Oh, yeah. And I think you can see so many similarities between AD and her mother. And I was wondering, when AD mentioned before Clay got there, he hasn't acknowledged the gift that she gave him. And Mama was real hesitant. And then it seemed like he won her over like that. And I'm thinking, what did they say in between that we didn't see for her to make such a shift? And really giving this great non-judgmental advice, because like you said, saying, their parents' relationships are different and those are their mistakes. Because I didn't catch when Clay was talking about his parents' divorce, that his parents were together for 25 years before they actually got divorced. So I'm thinking, I can see where he's coming from with being worried that he's going to repeat the mistakes of his father. And I'm like, wait a second, they didn't get divorced when you were young. It was 25 years together. So her really honing in on that with him, I think, is important, because like she said, you don't have to take on your parents' failures. Your relationship is your own. But AD saying that she would jump off a cliff without a parachute for Clay, little concerning, because that man, you're just both going to die. That man is not going to catch you. It's just physically not possible. So she has a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, there's idiosms, right? That sometimes it's like, all right, that one didn't hit. I'm the first person. Like I use a lot of analogies, and like I'm a quantity, not quality guy. So like I'll just, whether it's dad jokes, right, whether it's analogies, I'm quick to say them, but then like 2 out of 10 hit. So like I totally get that. It probably wasn't her best analogy, but like obviously the intention behind it was great. And, that was the one thing that I was just curious, like we just talked about, is like, all right, so like production was definitely influencing the direction of it, because it really is important for people to understand, like it is not, you get comfortable with cameras around, but if you're not a trained actor or actress, it's different. And so there are, especially when the family gets involved, because you as part of the cast, like you get a little bit numb to that situation. It becomes very fluid. But then your friends get involved, or your parents get involved, and they're like, looking over here, looking over there. So that's why I was very impressed that, like, all right, so they not only were they able to get her mom to focus on like, hey, these are talking points, right, in their dating pod experience and now post pod experience, for them to connect on that. It's fascinating to me to like see how that would have played out by production to them.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of that. I mean, we don't get any of it on our side. We just think everything is as we see it.
100%.
It's actually amazing to me how people at this point, and I guess I know people are still new to the show, still new to reality TV. I guess everybody's coming in at different times, but it's still amazing to me to see on social media how people will be like, for instance, there was a post that I think I declined in the Facebook group today that was like, it was asking why Clay got up and walked out in the middle of the conversation. They were like, it was so random. And I just thought to myself, how do they not realize at this point that this is all so pieced together, you know what I mean? And produced, but I understand people are still new to it, but it still blows my mind a little bit.
I'll throw a random percentage out there, but if it's helpful, it's just context. So I would say 3% of just things that were showcased of just Kelly and Mai's relationship, 3% of what was filmed was part of that. There's 97.
So very little. Yeah.
There's so much footage. Like, and some of it's disappointing. Some of it's like, you're indifferent. But there were a lot of things that, weren't showcased. And so it goes like this for every season because there's only so much, right, they can fit into the storyline and the character development that they're trying to portray. And most of it's consistent, right? And that's one thing I always remind people too, is like, a lot of those dramatic moments, some people are there for that, right? Like some people want to be part of the drama. But they're going to get the most of whatever you're willing to give them. So yeah, like that's one thing that I always want to remind people though, is that regardless of the stuff that is portrayed, there's so much, like it's almost impossible to try to explain to people. Like there's so much missing for like even the relationships on the guy side, right? Like the camaraderie that we had, and I know that's referenced a lot. There's just so much missing for like why we were so close, right? And like why the women were so close. So yeah, who knows how long they sat there and talked? Who knows, production got in her ear and was like, hey, like he's really worried about, his family's, his mom and dad's, divorce, and that had a huge impact on him. I'm sure in some way, shape, or form that was brought up. And then it's like, all right, exit Clay. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Do you have any one particular moment that stands out you wish would have aired from your filming?
There's a couple. It does go back to, I wish that they showcased the development on both sides of the male and female sides. There were so many moments of, we would go through a 16-hour day of filming, right? And this includes everyone, right? So this is before people started figuring out that they didn't have a match. So, you went home. But, we would all kind of rally together because we're exhausted, right? And we're going through this crazy experiment. But like there were moments where it's like, all right, like let's all have a cheers, let's have a toast. There's a lot of sentimental things that happened that I really think would hit home with audience. And even if they just put it into like a teaser video, right? Like a hype video, I think it would blow people away of just how organic and authentic that people are. And I wish that they would kind of pull the veil back just a little bit, right? Like the show's been out now for 6 seasons. People know enough about what's going on, and they also are never going to know the full extent. So that would be one takeaway. It was just really highlighting, right, the camaraderie on both sides. I think the second, I would say, probably more of the like getaway trips, like the excursions that we went on.
Sure.
Like if I recall, and it's been so long since I watched the season for season 1, like they barely highlighted it. It was like, oh, here's Giannina and Damien on a boat for a minute. There's no lead up. Like there were so many funny things that would happen, like when we'd see each other right before we go on dates. Mark and Jessica, like they went horseback riding. It was like a 10-minute process just for them to get on their horses. Like there's so many things, right? Like that they could have shown as just, funny, odds and ends stuff. But yeah, nothing really sticks out as like I wish that they had put in there. But yeah, just those little things I think would actually, get you closer to just the general audience. That's my opinion.
And speaking of getting close, next we have, I think, Amy and Johnny again.
Okay.
Jordan, what were your thoughts on meeting the fam, meeting Amy's dad?
Yeah, well, we talked briefly about it earlier, but yeah, I mean, it was really heartfelt. It was a really sweet moment. I know we got to meet Amy's mom later at the dress shopping. Both of her parents seem really great, very sweet people. Not much to say other than it's a nice heartwarming moment every time they're on the screen. So
yes.
What do you think, Kenny?
Pretty similar responses, Jordan. They're steady Eddie, right? They're consistent. This is where it's getting to a point where, and everyone that's watched all the previous seasons, and obviously the way that Kelly and I were shown, like it could go 50-50. Like it's either they're just going through the process and they're gonna, part ways when it's all said and done. That's totally fine. I would have respect for them either way. But yeah, I mean, there's just no surprises with them. Yeah, they're about, as consistent gets for this season.
I thought it was such a moment. I don't get emotional a lot over the shows anymore because we've seen so much at this point. But when he asked her dad permission for his blessing to marry Amy, I just melted, because you don't really see, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen with other couples, but we don't really get to see that. We don't really get to see the behind the scenes unless there's a big issue that needs to be addressed with the parents. So I thought that was very, very sweet. And like you guys said, not much else going on there. Very safe couple.
That's a really good point, though, because regardless of what was really going on, right, in conversations that were off camera, as much as production wants to capture everything, that was always their tagline. It's like, no, like film that. Like, I can't film everything, right? Like, I can't say all this stuff on camera. Like, there's some things I'm just not going to say. But I wanted to give a shout out to Johnny for that, because regardless of, maybe it was something they encouraged him, like, oh, this would be a normal thing that you would ask, based off of the situation, because that's highly plausible, right? Like, that could have happened too. But the way he presented it seemed very genuine and very intentional. So I've been impressed with him. He just seems like a gentle guy. It seems like he's just very, very well put together, and he cares about her regardless of if they get married or not. Right. Seems like he's very caring. So it's been good.
If anyone's on the show for the right reasons, whatever you clarify that on, I think Johnny and Amy are that couple this season.
Definitely. From what we can tell. And then
what we think,
on the other end of the spectrum, because I know we have to talk about it, is this whole big fight with Chelsea and Jimmy, because we've been leading up to it since week 1, the first 6 episodes released, and then now we finally gotten to it, and I felt like it was a little bit anticlimactic. Of course, I am like Team Chelsea, like in general. I'm really fighting hard for her because I think she's really getting a really bad edit.
Yeah.
Did you know ahead of time, after like seeing the previews, Kenny, that it was probably when she's talking about effing someone, that it was like a past issue and not something that happened during filming? Because I got that vibe.
I got the vibe as well. And it really is just like kind of reading into the clues that are already there. It's like, it would be really like, there would be very little chance that actually happened with someone that was on the cast that got brought back in. So that being Jess, like, I just felt like there's no way. So, they're doing their best to make it as dramatic as possible. And so to Jordan,
they're doing a great job.
Hey, I told Vince and Julian this, and they've gone through it, right? But like, they have gotten so good. They, as in Kinetic and production. Like,
yep.
You're basically playing chess against someone, right? You're playing chess against a master when you literally just bought a chessboard at Target, right? Like, it's like, hey, I got the instructions in front of me. Like, they are so far ahead, right, with what they're doing, and that is a scary thing to think about, but it's the reality. But it's still tough though, because going through the experiment, Jordan, like, I've met Chelsea. She was super friendly. Like, she is about as true, right, to like who you could be as what the show portrays, also as she is in real life. So like, I give her that. But you just don't know how people react in moments when you are getting filmed. So like, it's just like, really take a step back and try to picture where, that's any scene when like he comes home, right, and they're trying to reconcile their differences. The door is shifting so far where it's like, all right, like any normal couple, this is probably it, right? Like, if you've only dated for for like 30 days this time, like, you're probably not going to stay together. Like, if he's going out and truly hanging out with friends, partying, didn't invite you, and you truly weren't invited, and he comes home the next day and it's like, oh, nothing happened. Like, that wouldn't fly, and maybe that's just, it wouldn't fly in my household with me and my wife. But that's where it's tough, because you feel terrible for how she's been edited. You also were feeling really bad for how Jimmy was getting edited, and then like somehow, some way, right, they like reconcile and they're fine,
right?
So I've got a prediction, and then this is based off of just what I've seen. Like, I don't know if they were actually in it truly in the experiment. I think it's partially like, hey, we're doing this, we have to go to the altar. So it's just a lot of like, oh, well, Jimmy, you went out and drank with friends last night. Let's talk about that. And then Chelsea, like, what were you doing? Oh, I stayed home. It's like, all right, well, like, did he invite you? No. All right, well, let's make this a thing. Because like read the context clues. Like Jimmy, he doesn't really react, right? He seems like he just doesn't want to engage in it. So it's like, let me just diffuse the situation. Like, I love you, babe. And I explain that to my wife a lot, right? It's like there's a lot of things that even I said, like you use the L word. You're in a dating relationship that's being filmed. So there is like a shade of acting. I hate to say that, but like there is a shade of acting because
no, it's good to know
like what you're going through. Like, I always challenge people, if like you can put yourself in that spot, how would you react when you're basically, there is an expectation from production that like, hey, we need to get something from this. So what are you going to do? Are you going to, because you can't step away, right? You can't walk away because they're going to film you one way or another. So I'll always try to throw that in there now. It's like, it's tough to understand really what's going on.
And I will say, in fairness to Chelsea, it seems like if they did egg her on, she was pretty drunk. It wasn't a good time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think it played on a lot of her insecurities. But I did see a clip from Nick Viall's podcast that Jess said that Jimmy painted himself as a homebody. And it seems to be the opposite case, where he's talking about wanting to go out all the time and be out with his friends. And so I don't think they're a good match lifestyle wise anyway, because she just seems to need that constant reassurance. And he's given her he's given her a lot, whether it's genuine or not. It looks genuine, but that whole interaction, and then him getting spiteful and saying that he's not going to compromise at all, going, as it comes to not talking to this friend that he had sex with or whatever, that I don't think was like a genuine thing. It seemed like it was like said in the moment and out of anger.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine, well, I don't know. There's a lot that goes on, like you said, that we don't see. So
yeah, there's a world where, like, think about that moment. So what if they had dragged out trying to get footage of this? And like, there's part of it where you just get exhausted. So like his dismissal of that, like that one part, and this is where, intentionality really comes back in the fold, your self-awareness and how intentional you are about every single thing, knowing that like you have to be you have to show up and be present and be your best self. Because the one thing, which in real life, right, if there was a camera around all of us and then it was produced, we would all look like the worst people in the world.
Sure.
Like, think about it. Like, even at work, right? You get on a conference call, you get off a conference call, and you're just exhausted. Like, if you filmed every single part of that, so like that's where Jimmy, like, yeah, he seems like he's being dismissive, and he's just like, oh, I don't really care about that. It could be a part of it's like 3 hours of them talking about the same thing over and over again, and she's hitting them with the same sob story, and it's like, I'm not going to compromise on that. Like, I'm not going to talk about that, because it could have been just that, right? It's like, we've talked about this now for 3 hours. I got nothing else to do. Yeah.
And Nick did mention that they would sometimes make them relive these fights, and they were over it already. And then they get worked up again because they're getting right back into it. So I can see why sometimes people are leaving the apartment. Maybe it's not even to get away from your partner. Maybe it's just to get away from the cameras and have some peace.
It's pretty much your only place, right? Your only safe space, because you have to find it, whether you can do it right when you're going through it, or if you truly need like a physical separation just for a moment. Yeah, it's wild. Like I kicked it off. I mean, I probably haven't said anything that's that hadn't been said by other cast members before, but like everyone's got their.
Oh no, you definitely have.
It's just I try to provide a different framework, right? Because like, yes, the show is, as far as reality TV goes, it's completely different. And it is as authentic and organic as it could possibly be. And that comes from talking to other people that have been on their shows, right? Like, there are, like, Bachelor, Bachelorette, I don't even have to go there. Like, everyone knows that it's about as scripted as scripted gets. And sure, like, there's things that happen because you're in a controlled environment, and you're basically, you have undivided attention for the person that you're trying to pursue. Throw some alcohol in there, right? And then there's your drama. I mean, it's been done before. So yeah, Love Is Blind, I think, is getting to that point where they're kind of hitting their stride. And now it's just, let's see who we can, put in a position to stoke a little bit, and we'll capitalize on that, and we'll put it out there for people to watch.
And this is the same team that does Married at First Sight, which is on season like 927. So they know what they're doing.
They're, like I said, they're masters in chess. Yeah, Chris Colin, I have nothing but respect for him as far as like a professional, but he scares the living crap out of me. Like he's just not someone. He's not someone that I would want to cross paths with. Like it's just I have no interest. Wish him the best. He's phenomenal at what he does, but yeah, he's a scary guy.
Okay, Jordan, what have you got?
All right, we have a quick little conversation between AD and Clay where it seems like Clay is sort of hinting at maybe not being ready to get married, kind of hinting towards, maybe we say no at the altar, but then we continue to explore things afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And AD is kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time we've seen addressed that somebody very clearly says there is no chance of us dating if we do not get married. That's it.
Do
you feel like that was an option?
No. And I think there's a lot that can, I think contribute to that. I think it's one, they know that they've got some options as far as this cast versus previous. And again, like I think that's the way it should be. Like I honestly, in hindsight, I wish that we had the same, privilege to reference. Like we had nothing to base it off of. So we're just like, all right, like I think I'm making the best decision I can. But to talk about that moment, like that's the first ultimatum, so to speak, I think that we've seen on the seasons. Who knows, right? What root causes led to that, but I think it's actually a healthy response. It's not pressure.
Yeah.
The pressure is already there, right? Like you already signed up to go on the show. You made it through. You found a match. The pressure is like, hey, you're going to see this thing through. If they truly are, if they've been true to the experiment and it's an organic relationship, I actually support her saying that, because if you don't remain committed within that experiment and for how serious it really is, because just look at how much resources are applied to it. Like you are propped up to be a success story. And I referenced that with Lauren and Cameron from season 1. Like if you truly invest in that person because of the circumstances, there's no reason, right? If it's a true match that you can't make it. So if she feels that way and he's just kind of getting cold feet, which that could happen in the real world too. If you're not going to say yes now, then you're never going to say yes. Right. Like if they're that close and they have that bond, that's my opinion. But yeah, I think that's good on her to say, like, you know what? I think you're letting your second guessing kind of come to mind with things that have happened that are not in your control, which is his family dynamic. And so if he says, that there's going to be something where, if he says no during the experiment, as this, unfolds, it's going to be something he's got to figure out down the road. His next relationship, hopefully he, benefits from this as a learning experiment, because, if you can't say yes in this moment and you have a partner, right, that's actually a legitimate partner and they're being honest with you about it, it's going to be really easy to say no in other situations.
I can see that. And I think that's a good point with them. But I did always wonder, what is to stop anybody from agreeing to say no, or one person say no at the altar, and then just living their normal lives and dating like another couple in the world after the show is over? Yeah.
Yeah. I know that happens more so with people that are in, like the love triangles, as they like to reference.
Okay.
I know that's happened. It's got to be at least, 1 or 2 couples per season. It's like, hey, we didn't, get showcased, or like it didn't work out. They exit. And honestly, there were 2 couples that got engaged on our season that they never showcased. And so they actually dated longer than like a lot of people that were showcased, like, in the real world. It's like, all right, like we'll try this out. So yeah, like you really don't know, how that shakes out. But yeah, it's tough, right? Like you try to put yourself in someone's shoes, but everyone's life is different. Every person's different. So how you navigate things, and in this case with production and cameras all in front of you, there's a lot more distraction going on too, right? So it's like it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, like I would have done it this way, but you don't know their relationship with that person. You don't know the stuff that they've gone through, right? Whether it's their family background, or if it's stuff that previous relationships. You referenced trauma earlier. Like there's traumas, right, and triggers that come up. And honestly, when you're in that fast-paced environment of filming, you really don't have time to address it. So you just kind of let me park that there. Let me focus on what the task at hand is and get through it. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Who's
and
next?
then, okay, yeah. But just to wrap up, because I just want to wrap up this episode 10 since we're still on episode 10. We finally get to this.
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's not you.
You have given us so much insight that we did not know and things
There's
to
so much to
consider.
break down too.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally get to this cast party, this barbecue.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, may be my favorite setting for one of these that we've ever had. I thought it looked so pretty.
Okay.
I really want to go there.
Agreed. Lake Norman's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So we finally get to see this anticipated meetup with Jimmy and Jess, and we get to see I guess this is kind of the first time that we're for sure seeing Laura and Jeremy being split, like confirmation that they're split at this little party.
I don't even think it didn't seem like they knew. Is that something you think? Right.
It's speculation. So yeah, if anyone from Kinetic or Netflix is watching it, I'm speculating. I have no information. I have no intel, right, to contribute to this. But I think there's as good of a chance that, going back to what I referenced earlier, they kind of pit you against each other. So it's like, oh, is Jeremy going to be there, right? To Laura, oh no, like we couldn't get a hold of him.
Oh, God.
But by right, all the while, like they did, and so they kind of flipped the same story. It's like, oh, Laura's not going to come; she has no interest. Okay, fine, so I'll show up. So that's a chance, like that could have happened, and so that's why her honest reaction was like, okay, here we go, right? Like, of course, and again, you're stuck because here you are, you're mic'd up, you don't want to cause any more drama, but you kind of roll with the punches. So I mean, I could see that's how that happened, whereas like neither of them had any interest to be physically around each other, but productions, they're good at what they do, so they're salespeople for sure.
It sounds like a haunted house. Like you just don't know. Something's coming, but you don't know where it's coming from or what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what Vince and I aligned on that a lot. Where I'm a very drama-free person. I think it's a byproduct of like I grew up with two sisters. That was enough drama between them. So like I sat back a lot. I very much have middle child syndrome too. So like I don't need a lot of attention. I'm fine to just park it on the sideline and watch it unfold, and I'll interject when I need to. But I'm more of I'm a moderator, right? Like I come in and just make peace with people. But Vince and I talked about that a lot because it's like, you know what? I'm just going to show up, enjoy the barbecue, have some food, and I'll let them, if they want to be dramatic, like let all the other cast members be dramatic, and I'll be there to watch it.
And it was so much drama, especially the way things are cut. There was this conversation with Jess and Jimmy where she says, I want you, long pause, to be good to her. And where's that going? Is she going to confess her love and try and steal him away and pull a Sarah Ann? But no, just maybe some production tricks.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you mentioned, you kind of touched on this a little bit. They also ask, sometimes, I have to be careful how to word this. They have a way of
allegedly.
They have a way of asking similar questions, right? Framing topics of conversation and questions very similarly, but it happens multiple times. So like they're waiting to get the best answer, right, for what the shock and awe value is. So yeah, like they very much could have already had that conversation, right, between Jimmy and Jess 30 minutes prior when they were around other people. But then it's okay, like let's make the rotations. It's kind of like speed dating, right? Like if you went to a restaurant, like some people were at the charcuterie table, some people were over at the fireplace. Like they kind of put you in different settings and environments with different people, but they'll ask similar questions, like, "Oh, y'all should talk about this," and then they film it. So that's where you can't say that it's not real, and you can't say it's not organic. But yeah, like this has kind of already been captured. You guys are just trying to get a better tagline out of it.
Sure. Do you think, because it felt to us, Jordan, maybe you'll agree. Like once Jimmy heard that Jess had a daughter, that was no longer his number one. But he did tell Jess that she was his number one. Do you feel like that was genuine? Do you feel like it was a little produced? Do you agree with the kid assessment?
Oh man. Like I said, I'm very intentional. So I don't want to pretend like I know what Jimmy was processing, but one, if I was on the experiment currently, and you're dating someone that has a kid, it's very admirable in that situation to be like, oh, 100%, like I'll step in and I'll be a father, right, to a kid that's not mine. And there's people that do that in the real world, right, day in, day out. Like, and that's an amazing thing. When you're on a reality TV show, yeah, I would say that would be a huge deterrent. I'll just speak for myself. So
Okay.
that 100% probably contributed to it. And especially if you look at it through his lens, where it's like, all right, I have two people that I really enjoy talking to, but one doesn't have a kid. Great conversations, right? Seems like things are going places, and she's fun. Second has a kid. She, as he has said, like she scares the crap out of him, right? She's the smartest person he's ever known. Like, so it's like, all right, so am I going to sign up for a structured relationship? Which, if you're a mature man, right, and you're looking for that, then 100%. If you're wanting to kind of see the experiment and be a part of maybe something that's a little bit more lively and fun, post filming, then Chelsea's probably the option. So I don't know if I don't know if Jimmy thought that way, right? I would be hard pressed to think that he didn't. Just because, again, like if you signed up for the show, regardless of what your intentions are, what you tell people they are, you do know at this point that Love is Blind is going to get attention. So it's like, if you're looking at it that way, what decision you're going to make? You're going to go with someone that's going to be more fun and gives you a better chance to go through the experiment, or are you going to go with someone that's like, all right, we're going to get out of the experiment, and by no means, right, having a kid, and Jess seems like she's a phenomenal mother. That's just a different responsibility.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I would say it would be unbelievable if that did not contribute to his decision in the pods.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll talk to Jimmy about it later, though.
Yeah, let us know what he says, because we're still waiting on that go ahead from Paria to be able to chat with the main cast too. We've talked to Vince, obviously, but we're waiting for the go ahead for anybody else. Paria, let us know.
Shout out Paria. I used to talk to her often. Yeah, she's so nice. I love spending time with her. Yep.
Doing the work of a crew of 20, trying to hold it down.
I don't know how she balanced it. Yeah, she was like basically like everyone's emotional support dog. Just there for you. So even if you didn't have like an actual question, she would just come stand by you. Like, you good? Yeah, I'm good. We'll make through it.
And it really means a lot to us that she even acknowledged our existence and helped hook us up with Vince, because we're not we're not TMZ. We're just the Love Pod trying to get our footing. So we appreciate it when you guys help us out. It really means a lot. Yeah.
No. Well, I mean, again, thank y'all for just, inviting me on. I mean, it's been great to talk with y'all, and obviously love what y'all did with Vince, and I'm sure it's going to be a success for y'all one way or another.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Jordan, any final lake party thoughts before we roll on over?
Right. Well, I think most of the drama is going to be starting episode 11. So, obviously we have like a few different conversations that happen during this episode.
Yeah.
It's like actually kind of a lot of important conversations. I feel like things we've been leading up to happening during this whole party thing. So I would just like starting with obviously Sarah Ann arriving to the party obviously brings in some tension. But we have a few minutes. We kind of get to see Chelsea and Trevor sit down and have a conversation first.
That's a whole other episode.
That could be a whole series, just the four of them and what's going to go on in their relationships and their conversations. We are going to take a quick break before we get into those. Kenny, do you have time to hang out with us for episode 11, or do you have to get going? Okay,
no,
awesome. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We just wanted to separate this for the podcast because we know we chat a lot. So we're going to go on to part 2 for episode number 11, Roller Coaster of Love.
Let's go.
All right. And if you're not watching live, we are back with part 2 of our episode with Kenny Barnes from Love is Blind Season 1, recapping Season 6, Episode 11, Roller Coaster of Love. And boy, is it literal, figurative, everything. So we are back to the barbecue. We really haven't even started unpacking that one.
Mhm.
And Matthew isn't there, but is still featured in the barbecue. Any thoughts? Do you agree he looks like Clark Kent? Because AD was not having that.
Yeah, Jordan, what do you think?
That's not the person that came to my mind. I guess it's the glasses, but
Yeah. I mean, Clark Kent's a stretch, and everyone's got like doppelganger references, right? Especially like what's your celebrity look like, which has been a huge theme of this season, especially. Good, better, and different. I mean, he just struck me as he's a handsome guy, but he just seems kind of like your typical finance guy. No offense to finance guys.
Have you met him yet?
No, I have not. I've gotten to meet a few of them. Trevor being one of them. I mean, he seems like a likable, nice enough guy, but
Sure.
Such as most things go, right? Like if you don't actually know someone and knowing them before, right, they go on a show, and things that also happen afterwards. It's just there's a lot of unknowns there. So I'm sure I'll figure it out though in the coming months with Vince.
And there's people that are great friends or great people, and they're just terrible at relationships and terrible at cutting things off, or whatever the case may be when he does come out and talk. So he might be an amazing friend, and maybe he's just not the best he might be like the Chris of this season, it seems like, where just didn't want to ghost, but didn't want to lead somebody on. Who knows? We can't speak for him.
Yes.
But like Jordan said in the last episode, so they sit down and chat, Chelsea and Trevor. What did you think of this conversation, Jordan?
Well, I really liked Trevor in the pods, and I really thought, like a lot of people, I think that Chelsea should have chosen Trevor. But I mean, I felt like their conversation was it was fine. I don't know. It didn't stick out to me. I think I thought it was going to be a bigger thing than it was to me.
Okay.
I don't know.
What about you, Kenny?
I think that's a fair take. I really think that for all the circumstances, right? Like I think for him to make a point to continue to bring Jimmy into the conversation too, like he clearly was just, hey, like we're having this talk. And again, I think it kind of ties into just production, probably push them, encourage them to have that. And so Trevor was just being, and again, like I think he did it very well, but he was being playful. He was engaging her about it. But at the same time, like, y'all are still, going through this experiment. It's like, I'm not here to bash the wedding, so to speak. So I thought he handled that pretty well.
There were two takeaways I got really. One was that she would not be okay if the shoe was on the other foot, and he was saying the things, Jimmy was saying things to Jess that she was saying to Trevor, like you were my number one until the last day, and saying she still has the bracelet was another big thing. Because I can see from a nostalgia point of that period of your life being on this crazy Netflix show, wanting to have mementos. But if Jess had given Jimmy something, I don't think Chelsea would be okay with him keeping it. So I felt like it was a little hypocritical. I know your team, Chelsea, Jordan, but it just seemed like what she is okay with and what she expects back are not the same.
No, that's actually a really good point. And that's where, again, there's so much, right, that's missing, who knows? Who knows what was going through her head too when it's like, hey, let's frame this conversation. They could have also asked her, like, well, how would this have made you feel if you guys were in the pods dating? Let's talk about past things that you guys talked about. Like, oh, I still have the bracelet. I still have this. Like, you just don't. We as viewers, right? Like, you just don't know enough about what led to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course we have Amy and Johnny once again arrive. Nothing much going on there. There they are. And then Sarah Ann makes her grand entrance. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and we'll circle back because Sarah Ann, AD pulls her aside to have a conversation. And that was pretty memorable. So I'm going to start with you this time, Kenny, what you thought of that conversation and what it might have looked like behind the scenes.
Yeah. Again, you don't know what time, right, that conversation happened, based off of when she got to the party versus how much, like how long had they been there? And I hate to say it, but like, how long have they been drinking? What other conversations happened? Maybe there was already, some tension and other conversations had between other people, Sarah Ann and others. But it's also one of those things too, where I could see them pushing AD to say like, all right, you need to go talk to her about X, Y, Z.
Okay.
Now I did think that the conversation was, for most of it, right, it was very, respectable. I can understand where Sarah Ann's coming from, right, where it's like, hey, I just got invited here, right, by production to be a part of the, the lake day. I don't want any drama, but at the same time, like everyone knows better. Like you understand the dynamic and you understand what you're walking into, and also it's important to remember too is like at this point everyone in the cast has phones, so if you even like go back and some of the comments, right, of like, oh, like this person's entering in the chat, it's like, oh my god, like I didn't even know they're going to be here. Like I kind of call BS on that. Everyone talked, right, like we all knew where each other were, and that's the same thing with Jimmy too. Like when Chelsea was getting upset with him about like, oh, well, you were out with so and so, he's like, oh, you didn't talk to them. It's like, I guarantee you that they all knew what each other were doing that night.
Sure.
So yeah, as far as like how that conversation went, though, I mean, I think it was right for her to ask those questions and at least kind of call Sarah Ann out because technically she was there to do exactly that. I mean, it's whether they show it right through production or not, like Jeremy and Laura were still together. So in the real world, that would obviously not fly. So obviously during filming, it's different.
Okay. What were your thoughts on that conversation, Jordan?
I thought it was like a tense conversation. It was kind of like there were parts of it that I thought maybe, okay, we're kind of, I don't know, on the same page, but then it felt like at the end, it felt like Sarah Ann was really like upset about being confronted, I guess, about it.
Yeah.
Like she really, and then even when she sat down and she talked to Jeremy, she, she's really just maintaining her innocence. She's like, I didn't do anything wrong. Whereas obviously everybody else sees that very differently, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I thought she hasn't turned off her comments today, and people are coming at her left and right. And I said, you are very brave because that is definitely leaving doors open that I would rather seal shut and tape and never come out again. But she made it seem like Jeremy said that he and Laura were broken up and had ended things when he went and met up with her. So it's not painting him in the best light, but she kind of just dismisses it. And it was like, oh, okay, he said that. And so it's fine. And even though AD is being very clear that that's not the case, she just brushes it under the rug. And AD had said, if you feel interrogated, that's on you, baby. And it's true. I didn't think AD was being disrespectful at all. I thought she was trying to just get a better understanding of the situation. And it seems like there's one person every season who they put in that role who is like the nurturer of the group and stirring a little bit of the pot, but just trying to get other sides of the story.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, right? Is they're trying to get different perspectives. And so I think that could have been the moment where it's they both have been there for a little bit. You're having some fun. Jordan, I think you brought up a great point where it's like it was a fine conversation until towards the end. It definitely got a little bit, snippy back and forth, but it's Sarah Ann, like you already knew what to expect going into that setting. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? If you show up to that party knowing enough about what's going on, like you couldn't have seen that going well. Like there's going to be drama at some point. So you just kind of be careful what you buy into, right?
Yeah. And we see that now circling back to Laura and Jeremy finally having this conversation after they supposedly haven't spoken other than very terse words for 4 days, 3 or 4 days.
Sure.
And I felt like, listen, Laura is not my I didn't think she treated him the best. I thought she was very hard on him in a lot of small ways, but that didn't make what he did right. And he's trying to gaslight her into saying that it's her fault. And maybe it was. Maybe he knew that he didn't want to be with her at a certain point. But the way the timeline added up to whether you agree with Sarah Ann messaging him in this situation or not, he should have broken off with Laura before pursuing Sarah Ann. Of course, hindsight is 2020. But it was just kind of awkward. He said he packed up her stuff for her. How do you know that she wanted to leave? They must have been broken up at that point. It just didn't really make sense to me. And it seemed like he was more concerned with his reputation among the cast and America than with what actually happened with the situation and his relationship with Laura. So I thought that was pretty shitty way to handle it and a little bit of F-boy vibes. But did you guys have a different thought about that? Kenny, I'll start with you.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm gonna mute myself. These dogs.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I'm surprised my dogs aren't barking too. They're passed out in their beds. It is really tough until like, I guess unless I was able to sit down right and get both of their perspectives and then make a decision off of that, because it truly is one of those moments where it's like you got two sides and you have the truth. So somewhere in the middle, like I think there's a lot that contributed to it. I'm sure like Jeremy's probably a great friend. Like he seems like a fun guy, seems like a nice enough guy, but the experiment could also get the best out of you. It also get the worst out of you, and depends on the moment. And so now that time has gone on, and again, like I'm not TMZ, but stuff that has led to, right, that stuff that's come out of his past, it doesn't really put him in a better position based off of, right, how things ended on the show with him and Laura. We'll see how it plays out, right? And time definitely will reveal, whatever actually happened. With her, I'd say that production, they've been pretty consistent that like she's just like she's like the bad bee. So like she leads with an authoritative fist, and like she demands a lot. But I have a younger sister who's pretty bossy. So like you can deal with that. I never got a sense that she was being like super rude, right, or aggressive. I just think that that's her personality type. And I think to your point, I think there's moments where it's like, all right, like it would be more plausible that he's gaslighting her to make himself look like the victim out of convenience for the fact that he's kind of fallen short of at least being there for her. That's my take on it.
And I feel like that always happens where anytime somebody tries to paint themselves in a good light, we saw it with Andrew in season 3. We saw it with, we saw it with Matthew this season. Anytime they try to paint themselves in a good light, they are getting productions calling them out. They showed that by Zine with Andrew. They showed Matthew saying, what would America think of him? And I think they're doing the same with Jeremy. What did you think, Jordan?
Well, mainly just that, when we obviously Laura she handed it to him. It was a good moment. I liked it.
Yep.
But then we have this sit down. We're continuing the conversation. We have Sarah Ann and Jeremy sitting down, and she's basically saying, I don't think what I did was wrong. He's saying, I don't think what you did was wrong. And then they went and rode jet skis around, which I'm sure was like some, cutting and putting stuff together. But it just seemed like he was just so flippant about the fact that he had just, ended an engagement. He just went and, hopped on the water with the other woman. So
and she didn't miss a beat there either when first Laura, obviously, with kick rocks with open-toed shoes. She is on it with her insults. And then Sarah Ann glossing over, we said in the last episode, Jeremy saying he had ended things with Laura when it looked like to the viewers he ended things with her at the barbecue, or really she ended things with him. And I also am curious the dynamic. So we found out last episode, Vince and Sarah Ann tried to work things out. And then Sarah Ann and Jeremy tried to work things out. So the timeline of that, because filming happens on a pretty short timeline, right, Kenny? It's like 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it's right at 6 weeks. I think it was like 45 days from start to finish. It's very
we
tight.
know, yeah, they went to Hawaii after the pods. And then it seems like right after that, maybe things just didn't go well in Hawaii. We didn't find out the full story, but then she moved right back on to Jeremy. So I'm interested to talk to her and see what that dynamic is, because they don't show Vince at all. We see 0.5 seconds of the most social cast member out there.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty major part in that story too.
Oh, no doubt. And that's a great point, right? When there's so many other instances like that in every season where it's just they couldn't fit into the plot, right, and into the character development. But they could have easily done it. It just would have gone down a different path. So who knows, right? They could have had a scene where Vince was a part of it, and he thought, oh, like I'm going to be a part of this for sure, and just that didn't make the cut. So it is wild to look at.
And we know now that the cast doesn't get to see the episodes before they air. Did you guys have that opportunity, or was it just as it comes out 2 years later, you're watching it for the first time?
So ours, we got to watch the first 2 releases. When it got to the after the altar and the reunion, we didn't have early access to that, but we did have, I think it was like 48 hours advance, and I think really it was just to prepare us for what we really didn't know. And context is really helpful. The world had just shut down. So like we were all super vulnerable, just like what was going on in general. And it's like, hey, by the way, we're going to drop this off, on y'all. And it's almost Valentine's Day. You haven't seen your friends and family, right, in 2 weeks since there's nothing going on. By the way, this show, right, that we've had, in the back burner for 2 years, it's coming out. Like, okay.
Ta-da!
And no one, between that and Tiger King, right? Like that's all people can watch. So like thankfully they gave us like a 48-hour, if I do remember, it was like 48 hours, if not 24 hours, a precursor to watch it. And that helped me. So like I was in a very serious relationship, now married to the same woman. I watched all of it to write down things that happened to then give to my now wife, so she had context. Because I knew it was like, I knew enough, right? That's all right. Like this stuff is not going to be either 100% accurate. It's going to be a little bit misleading. The timeline of things too, to that point, right? Like if I said, oh, like I love her, she's the woman of my dreams. Those were interviews that took place in the same backdrop, sometimes 30 days later, right? It's like, oh, let's wind back. How'd you feel the moment, right, that, you talked to Kelly on your 4th date when you guys decided that you guys were going to, go through with it and propose to the wall? I'm like, so when you have that question asked over a series of days that are separated, you answer it differently. So fortunately we had that advance release, because that helped me out tremendously to get that into my, now wife's hands. Because otherwise I can't imagine how you just let's react to what the world says and,
and no preparation, it seems like. I mean, several people had asked us if we get screeners ahead of time, and we're like, no, how do we get on this list? And then I asked some of the cast, and they said, no, we don't get to see it. So it seems like it changed from your season. I can only imagine maybe that's why
I think
so much more brutal.
I think so. And I really do think it was just because we were the first ones. They probably had their hearts out for us a little bit, just because we anyone, I don't care who it is, right? If it's Lauren, if it's Jess, if it's Barnett, like we were all pretty nervous about it. And we were all confident with who we are. We're, fortunately, we're all, well-to-do people, have a tremendous amount of respect for each and every one of them. But when that was happening, we'd had so much conversation leading up to it that it almost got to a point where we were exhausted with people asking us, right? It's like, hey, you went on that show you filmed 2 years ago. Like, when's that coming out? And it always became like a joke, like, oh, like it's never going to be a thing. And little did we know, like it became a really big thing. So I think that of all the things I could thank production for, it would probably be that. It's just to at least give us a little head start before it got crazy.
And we talked about that too. It's been so long since you filmed. You're probably exhausted of talking about the same things of your relationship that happened 6 years ago over and over and over. So what could we do that's different? And having you guys on for the recaps too. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to get some fan questions in there. But being able to have a different vibe than, okay, what were you thinking at this moment with Kelly? And what was going through your head when you spoke with Cameron about this? And,
Sure.
so we appreciate that you're still hanging in there 6 seasons later with Love is Blind and the Love is Blind crew.
Yeah.
The
Well,
Pod Squad.
and yeah, obviously I'm doing it more so just because it's Charlotte based, right? Like I haven't really been that engaged with other seasons, and I've kept up with them. You know, I interact with, you know, a good bit of them on like Instagram and stuff. But yeah, when it was obviously released in Charlotte, there's so many connections through, like, you know, small business owners I'm friends with. And it's like, oh, I met so-and-so, or, oh, they filmed right at my coffee shop. So like it was just easy interaction. And that's actually how I met Vince, was my wife's former assistant. She met him, I think, out with friends. And so they get to talking, and, you know, 6 degrees of separation. It's like, oh, well, like, you know, you're on Love is Blind. Well, like, my former boss's husband's Kenny. And like, so we got connected through that. And, you know,
Yeah.
out, he's like, hey, would you grab coffee with me? You know, I was like, dude, sure. Like, if any way I can help you out, you know, because I'd navigated it, and like we kicked off the show. It's an experiment, right, that no one else fully understands. So if I can help you out in any way, shape, or form, like I'm here to do that. So that's why I'm involved more with this season, just because it's close to home.
No, that totally makes sense. And it's really great that you guys have that inner support system of being able to give advice and get advice about how to handle these situations that nobody else has gone through. It's a very small world. Even in these big cities, Atlanta, Houston, Charlotte, you guys all run into each other, it seems like, and you do have a lot of interaction. So it's good that everybody has each other's support.
Totally agree.
Moving on to these excursions, I guess I'll call them, or like date nights. Jordan, what did you think of the dates?
Well, the one that stuck out to me was Chelsea and Jimmy at the amusement park, because I thought that was such a cute insight into like a more positive aspect of their relationship. It was really fun and lighthearted. Just to see them having fun and laughing together was really refreshing to me. And it, you know, not that I really am hoping one way or another for them, but I just like to see something a little different, because we've seen so much negative between the two of them. It was really nice to see something positive with those two.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think about these date nights, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, theirs was my favorite as well, because I really think it was about as authentic as it gets. Now, granted, if you have a private access to you know, Carowinds, you know, to the amusement park, I'd be hard pressed that like anyone couldn't have fun. But for them, I felt like, I'm sure even during filming, regardless of where they were at, you know, from the relationship status, like that had to have been a huge, just like sigh of relief. Like, all right, we can kind of like let our guards down. We're being ourselves. We're getting to be, you know, relaxed and loose. So Jordan, that's a great point, because you don't get that right during the 45 days of filming. It's like, okay, so it's just going to be stressful the entire time. For them, they got to kind of break away. They had cameras on them, but got to have some fun too.
And it seemed like that was the most unique activity. I mean, we did see the sneaker painting with AD and Clay, and then Chelsea and Jimmy carved the ice. But it's like they got a whole closed theme park, and then Clay and AD did get a private dinner, but then they just threw some s'mores at Amy and Johnny, and they're like, all right, you're good, whatever. Enjoy the bonfire that you guys had to build yourselves. Seemed like that they really were setting up Jimmy and Chelsea for like the most fun, maybe because they had the biggest roller coaster, literally, figuratively. Again.
That was good.
One conversation I did want to get everybody's feedback on is, so one of the big topics that has come up a lot throughout this season is birth control, because of the dynamics with Amy and Johnny discussing how they're going to handle their relationship and making sure that they don't have kids before they're ready. So to me, at least, it seems like Johnny just doesn't understand the perspective of what happens to a woman's body when they take pills, when they take hormones for birth control. That's what I got. There's a lot of other people whose perspective is he should know better. And why is he so adamant? Why doesn't he know what a condom is? So where do you think he's coming from, Kenny?
I mean, God, that's really tough to make assumptions. It could be a generational thing. Like I'll be 33 at the end of, well, I guess what, March is tomorrow? It's March 1st tomorrow?
March 1st is tomorrow.
Yeah. So my birthday is March 28th. So I'll be 33 at the end of this coming month. And, I think what, Johnny's 25, 26?
He's young. Yeah, maybe 27. He's in that mid to late 20s.
Yeah. So like, I do know that like sex education in middle school, like it was kind of phasing out. And I'm not saying that they don't, have sex education and they don't talk about it, but like, I think it was a lot more structured in school, even before I was in middle school. But like, I do remember that some of my buddies that were a little bit younger than me, like they didn't talk about it in their like in their health classes. So I kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. Like it really could have just been like, he was not educated on it.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also think that that's societally, like it's also our responsibility as just adults to educate yourself. So it's like, there's kind of like a catch-22 there where it's like, I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but it's also, it's not like you don't have access to the information. It's not like you aren't an adult and you haven't been in other dating relationships. There's so many ways to look at it. Also, it could be production just keeps talking about it because it could have been one thing, right, that they talked about for a little bit longer than other topics, and so they've kind of made a thing out of it. Like Jordan, I saw you kind of raise your head too. Like I think it's spiraled into this thing that like if he was here right now, right, having a beer with me, he'd probably like, I know about sex education. Like there's a lot of missing things here, and like of course practicing safe sex, right? Like they're doing that, but I definitely think it's kind of gotten blown out of proportion just a little.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like they're just, because I feel like they've had this conversation like 3 times now at this point. It's like it almost feels like that's the only thing that they not even disagree on, but it's like the only thing and the only conversation that they had that was like maybe a little bit difficult in any way. And so they've just had to have it over and over and over again just to provide something, for them to put on the show.
I told Vince.
They're one negative.
I told Vince, like when when growing up, like you learn how to cook like one dish. So like for me, it was like French toast. But like when I figured out how to make French toast, like, well, I just make French toast all the time. Like that's all they have. So like to Jordan's point, like I think there's just like, all right, well, like, this is the only like hot topic that we can talk about. So like have at it. Let's talk about condoms again, Johnny. He's like, okay.
Yeah. if we have to. It doesn't seem like a problem with Amy. So many people are coming really hard at Johnny for this. And again, like it's maybe just because production keeps bringing it up, but she's fine having the conversation, and they're both standing their ground about whether he's going to get a vasectomy or she's going to be on birth control or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I think we're making it as the fans a way bigger deal too than it needs to be, or that it even is between the two of them. It's their relationship. It's their birth control.
Well, and that's a good point too, to just, I guess, focus on is it also could be production. Maybe they think like that's useful content. Like,
sure.
There's parts, right, where like they might use it as like an educational piece. Like it really might not even mean that much to Johnny and Amy. Like it could just be production wanted to talk about it, and like of all the things that Johnny and Amy probably talked about, and I'm sure they're tired of hearing about this themselves, right? Regardless of if they talked about it a lot and like how sincere it was, I think production could have just taken it and they're like, oh, well, like there could be couples out there that aren't educated, and so we're going to make Amy and Johnny the sex ed couple. That's a hot take. It's a hot take, but like it's the only thing I can make sense of like why they keep talking about it.
I
don't know. Like also education from a female's perspective. I know my wife, like she was on birth control all the way up until recent, but it was really just because of the fear of getting off of it. So it's the same thing with Amy of like getting on birth control, the chemical imbalance that has a huge impact. And I know from conversation, obviously I haven't experienced it.
Right.
But yes, like that could have also been a very sensitive thing for Amy during filming. So maybe
Mhm.
that's why she is participating in the conversation, because Johnny's like, well, like I'll do my best to just kind of keep it focused on me, not you, because they could have been pressing her about it. Like, hey, why are y'all not having sex? Oh, like I don't want to get on birth control. And like, I could see a place where like they probably pressured her a little bit about it, and she
Okay.
was probably tired of having to say like no. So Johnny probably just came in to act like the gullible guy, like, oh, well, condoms, like I've never used a condom.
Ugh.
I don't know him, that well, but I can see a place where like he was just kind of saving her in a very like respectful way.
Sure.
Right? It's like, yeah, I'll
He,
participate. Yeah, I'll participate in this if I have to. Yeah.
he took one for the team there, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like there's the most recent seasons, there's always one hot button topic. And they did it with Married at First Sight too, where they kind of danced around religion, they kind of dance around politics, whatever the case may be. And then this season, I would say is, and maybe it's just because of the location, like religion has really been at the forefront, even the cast bios. And even even though we don't see them anymore, Brittany and Kenneth really focusing on their faith as the main thing that tied them together, and that being important in their relationship. We didn't see that as much as previous seasons. So maybe this is, like you mentioned, the soapbox that we're going to get for this season. And this is the way they're going to tie it in. I could see that too. But it's interesting. It's never come up previously. And I'm sure that's a conversation that couples have had if they don't want to have kids on the show.
Very much so. Yeah, like I know just between conversations that Kelly and I had, I know conversations that Mark and Jessica had. I'm sure Cameron and Lauren. I know they're all people of faith. So yeah, to your point, like that might not have been the sexy topic for production to focus on, but it's definitely been a natural topic, right, for most of the couples that I know of.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the birth control convo, Jordan?
Other than just, I don't know. I am curious about why it's been focused on so much, but other than thinking maybe it's just the only thing that they had to go off of, I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah, it's their only conflict, it seems like, if it's even a real one.
yeah.
Okay, then to wrap up this sweet little episode, we end the roller coaster on a high note with wedding dress and tuck shopping, everybody's favorite.
Oh yeah.
And let's start with the dress shopping. Did anything stand out for you, Jordan?
I really enjoyed, and I don't even remember enjoying it so much in previous seasons, but I could just be a little bit more invested or something. But I really enjoyed the wedding dress shopping and just kind of the overall like support with all of the women in this room. And I feel like that's been a little bit of a theme this season. There was just so much like female support of one another overall in
Yeah.
this season that I think has been really beautiful to see. And I actually did get a little bit emotional during the wedding dress try-ons because I don't know, it was just, and everyone is just supporting each other and just like being kind to one another. And it's really, I thought it was a really nice little moment with all the women there.
Yeah. What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jordan. I think that was as close as viewers are going to get to knowing how the women, right, interacted with each other, probably on a more frequent basis. You take all the drama, right, and all the storylines out of it. It's like there's a lot of support there. There's a lot of respect there, and yeah, I didn't get emotional, but yeah, it definitely made me think of like, okay, I could see my sisters going through this with their friends. Like it was a very normal thing. It didn't seem like it was produced. So it's cool to see that because in such a crazy dynamic, right, for people to get that close so quick, to also let their veil down, which that's a pun. Yeah, to let their veils down, like that's a really special moment. And obviously, anyone that's going to go through the wedding planning process, get your dress is a huge decision, and that's a big box to check off. So the fact that they could actually go through that together and to share that moment's pretty cool.
You brought up a good point with saying we don't really see a lot of the I guess, same gender cast bonding behind the scenes. We've seen them go wedding dress shopping before. We've seen them go tux shopping, but we don't see, other than these quick little interactions in the pods, with the exception of Aaliyah and Lydia last season, really close bonding happening. And we all know why that at least appeared to play out the way it did, with Uche being the common denominator. But once it comes out on social media, you can see each other, whether it's somebody that didn't like the other person or had bad blood, really coming together and supporting each other. And this is, both of your good points, the season where we can see these female friendships and the bonds that everybody's forming. Not as much, I think, for the guys as we see the after on social media, like even with different seasons, hanging out with Vince. And I do love that too. I did get the vibe. It sounded like Chelsea is maybe a little bit of, or was, I'm sorry, a little bit of a bully. Her friend was saying she used to steal her school lunches, which I thought was an awkward thing to include, but now they're best friends. So I guess it worked out for them. But it was this wholesome moment. And it was like, oh, by the way, I met her because she used to take my lunch every day. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe go a little easier on Chelsea. She's having a really hard time this season.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it could be just friends being nervous, right? Like first date, weird energy. Like, what are you gonna say? Like, yeah, she's still my sandwiches. It's cool. Like that's the best thing that you can reference. Like, what?
Yeah.
What about our sleepovers? What about all this other stuff that actually happened? Yeah, like that's fine. I mean, I think it's just a good way of like actually seeing behind the scenes a little bit, right, and taking the cameras away from it. It's just, I think it's quality people spending quality time together. That was cool.
I did find it interesting too. So it seems like when women in general go dress shopping, they bring their family, they bring their mothers, and then at least on these seasons, I don't know what it's like tux shopping as a man for your wedding, but it's their friends really. It's not a father-son bonding kind of a thing unless your dad is really in your friendship circle. And so it was the guys being bros. And I cannot tell you how many comments I've seen about Clay's friends, and I think it was Jimmy's friends too, and how they want them on future seasons, the fans, or how attractive they are.
Sure.
And that was the most memorable thing I got out of the tux shopping experience. It's just a totally different vibe, from emotional to like playful, hanging out, low key. Did you feel that way tux shopping for your season?
Oh man. So to give you the tea, our tux shopping experience on season 1 was absolutely terrible. We were there for 8 hours. So I mean, it was a marathon. You do have, you get to hang out with your friends, right? It's like our groomsmen that were they became part of the cast, right?
Sure.
They're all getting to hang out with each other, but it's awkward because they're all trying to figure out like, okay, like has your buddy lost his mind, right? It's like all my friends are talking to Barnett's buddies, like, yeah, like Kenny's an idiot, like I can't believe he's here. But yeah, like it was 8 hours of just like forced filming, essentially.
Okay.
So if you actually go back and watch season 1, I don't even think they showcased the guys' tux selections outside of like Nick coming in, talking about how significant that process is. And I'll close with, I actually don't know of any of my buddies that one, all my friends are married at this point, including myself. It's not really a thing. That's what
I thought.
It's a very solo thing. Like, and one is just that no one actually reached out to me to do it, but none of my friends ever talked about it either. It was more of a like, here's a group chat, maybe a picture of like, here's a tux that's hanging up, or hey, this is me in the mirror, right? Like, thumbs up, guys. Like, it's gonna happen. We're a month out, whatever. But like, I've actually never heard of, and maybe I'm just in my little circle. Like, I've never heard of guys going out together to tux shop. I don't know. Maybe some people just have an excuse to go out and drink beer and try on fancy clothes. I felt like it was like, hey, I'll go in, I'll go to the local tux shop, get size. I've got this look in mind. I'm open to feedback, but from a guy's perspective, like I kind of want it to be more of an intimate thing, right? Like I know what I want. Give me some feedback. Like if I'm way off, let's figure it out. I'm in and out. I'm a buyer, not a shopper. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if other guys are like that.
Jordan, what were you picking up during the tuck shopping?
Yeah, I didn't think much about the tuck shopping. I mean, I was all focused on the dresses.
Of course. Yeah. Again, even as a viewer, you want to see the dresses. The tuxes, you're like, all right, it's a jacket, it's a tie. What else can you do with it? The dresses are where it's at. So I agree. The only other thing that I picked up was Johnny's friend Ruiz said he is high on life for him. And that I thought was very cute that he would be that excited, whether he just wanted to get out of his interview or not, to support his friend in this crazy experience that most people would not be down for. And that was really the most wholesome moment I got out of tuck shopping. Not that it wasn't wholesome, but again, like you guys said, it was just, most guys don't. The bachelor party's the big thing. It's not going and trying on jackets and shirts and getting measured. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Teach their own. Like if there's people out there that do that, like, and that's fun,
Yeah.
By all means, you go for it. Yeah. I got other stuff I want to do with my buddies, like golf or just anything else, to be honest.
You're literally anything else.
I'll go grocery shopping before. Like we got Harris Teeter here. So like Harris Teeter, they have bars there. So like genuinely, like I'd rather go grocery shopping. Not that alcohol has to always be a feature, but like if you're gonna hang out with your friends, that's a very easy social thing. Yeah, like tuck shopping is just not kind of on the list of things I consider to be social.
I do want to, speaking of alcohol, you had mentioned already your role, or like the role alcohol played in your dating experience, the Baileys and coffee thing. Do you feel like it impacts people on the show in general? Like, is that a big, not decision maker, but influence in trying to loosen up and be genuine about the experience or going through the crazy experience in general?
Yeah, well, I guess surface level comment, like obviously alcohol impairs judgment in general.
Sure. Yes.
Right. So
right.
This is where you get PC, Kenny. I would say though that it's important to note, anyone that went on the show, doesn't matter what show it is, but we'll talk about Love is Blind. Like the alcohol is going to be made available, but it was never like, oh, let's bring out a tray of cocktails. Like it was there. You had a beverage cart, you could serve yourself. And yes, there were guys, because we talked about, it's emotionally and physically exhausting. So people look to vices, and I witnessed plenty of guys that ended up having to just leave because it became too much, but they also they drank too much. It was like, well, you can't even show up to make dates. Yeah. So like you can kind of see people falling off that way. I wouldn't say that any of the actual people that end up getting, featured, no one actually over consumed. But we definitely drank, like that, having wine right on date night. I think that was what made us more comfortable with the setting. It wasn't drinking to get drunk. It was like, hey, what can we do right to make this as normal as possible? It's like, oh, I'll have some wine and sit and talk to this person. But yeah, I mean, it was made available. How much you consume is definitely your choice. We've all gone out, right, and had nights where you drink a little bit more. Unfortunately, when you're on set, you're drinking for up to 16 to 20 hours. So like you just kind of do the math. Like if you're having one drink every hour, like you're going to get pretty sauced.
Okay. That's fair. And we don't see obviously Chelsea looking pretty hammered, and during the I'll call it the pre-honeymoon this year, there was a lot of alcohol flowing. But as far as the pods, I didn't notice, and I don't even know if they would show anybody looking so drunk that they're stumbling into the pod and slurring on their dates. We saw Tiffany fall asleep on a prior season during her date, but she just said she's a napping queen. So I can relate there. Before we get into giving you some time to support a really good cause, Kenny, I just wanted to ask you guys any final thoughts or feedback on this episode, Jordan?
No, I don't think I do. I feel like we went through everything that I had on my mind about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything.
All right, Kenny, what about you? Any final thoughts on 10 and 11?
Craziest episode so far. I
Mhm.
think obviously all by design. I think production's done a great job of just kind of keeping the castmates together and building the storyline. I can't wait to see what the next couple episodes have in store. Just from a little bit that we've seen, also what I've talked about with Vince. But yeah, I mean, I wish the cast nothing but the best, to be just completely genuine and fair. Like
Sure.
whatever ends up happening, right? That's on camera and how it's produced. Like I really hope that they're happy and comfortable with where things are at, and it's going to be a wild ride to the finish. That's for sure.
Okay, now you have a very good cause that you support with 2A Distillery. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So a 2A bourbon / distillery, they just started up. So this is a guy that's a veteran, and he wanted to have a good cause because one, he loves bourbon, but his background is he wants to support disabled veterans. So I want to say it's like 50% of his profits go to help different organizations, right, with disabled veterans. It's called 2A Bourbon, and they actually ship you these really cool like novelty cases that
is really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'd actually never heard anything of it, but good cause, Second Amendment, just so we can defend ourselves if need be. But this is the bourbon in its case, and I'm probably never going to open it up. It'll be one of those things that just always sits on my shelf. It'll be a good talking point or conversation piece, but ultimately it's for the cause. So I'll probably make a post about it later, right, or put it on a story. But super cool guy. His name's Tim Oates, and he's out of Durham, North Carolina. So shout out Tim for all you're doing with 2A bourbon.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks to Tim for supporting disabled veterans. Kenny, thank you to you for coming on and joining us for this very long recap of 2 episodes of the most recent season of Love is Blind. We also have some merch. We're going to donate to a good cause too. We're going to donate to animal rescue, and we'll tell you guys more about that as we plan our battle of the seasons, which we have to talk to you about, Kenny.
Awesome.
But we have these cute mugs that Jordan made. I don't know if you could see. There's our little logo, LovePod Podcast. Cool. And then on the back, even though you guys have your pod squad, we are the reality TV pod squad.
That's
so
cool.
We'll be repping these. And of course, our LovePod shirts. So we've got some merch in the works. But I think that is it for today. Thank you to Vince for hooking us up with you, Kenny, for the interview.
Absolutely.
And thanks to Mental Health Hot Takes Podcast for coming on by and asking some great questions. Jordan, anything else to close out the evening?
I think that's it. We've got our interview coming up with Taylor from season 5. We're really excited to talk to her. And just make sure that you subscribe to the Love Pod wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the place at the Love Pod Podcast. And we're going to keep doing these recaps through the rest of the season. We're excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. Thanks, guys, for watching. We love you, and we will see you next time on the Love Pod.
Yep. Thank you all.